You're listening to Being Built. I'm the host, and I'm also the founder of Reliant Search Group, an executive search and tech staffing company. I'm here with Chris Johnson. You are the president and CEO of the Countryside YMCA in Lebanon, which was for a long period of time the largest YMCA in the country. Still in the top 3 or 5 or something, right? Huge.
Yeah, one of the biggest. Yeah.
Man, I walked through that thing and I got lost. I thought I was on a different planet at some point. I didn't know my way back.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I had a tour guide the first time through. It was an impressive facility.
Yeah, we're definitely a little different. Multiple entrances, multiple pools, gyms. People that think they know whys come visit, and they're like, this is different than what I've seen before. So,
how do you govern all the entrances? Does everybody have like a key card kind of pass, or what? How's everybody come and go?
Yeah, I mean, we staff them different hours. But yeah, everyone has a pass that they can scan in, and we typically have them staffed. We literally just last week went to 24/7 access. So now we have a separate key fob that people can, if they really want, at 2 a.m. to come access. Again, small part of the building, like we don't allow pools and locker rooms overnight. But if they want to come get a workout or get on a spin bike at 2 in the morning, they can.
Okay.
I think more often it'll be like Sunday mornings and Saturday nights and holidays. Like now, if you really need before the Thanksgiving meal, you can come in and get your workout first and then go into.
I assume it will take a while before you find a market for those off hours. It's not like people were just lined up waiting for that, right?
You know, I announced it back in January that it was coming this year. And the amount of feedback, we've already sold, it's been a week, we've sold 500 of those access cards.
Really?
And people have been asking about it. I mean, we've actually, people talk about, they've been able to cancel another gym membership because for like weekends or Sunday mornings, we don't open till noon normally. So people were like, I can cancel my other membership now because I can come to Countryside.
Some other facility they were going to just
that they were managing their off schedule.
Wow.
You know, Lebanon's not a big second, third shift. It's not a factory town.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's not going to be a lot of that audience.
Sure.
But it's more of, again, those weekend times. It's the we open at 5 a.m. It's the people that say 5 a.m. is not early enough for me. I want to get there at 4:30.
Yeah.
And then probably most exciting for me, we've had a few families, young families, where it's like, you know, my spouse and I, we like put the kids to bed, and then one of us on Monday, Wednesday will go work out, one of us Tuesday, Thursday. Well, now they can get there because we close at 9. So they can get there at 8:30 and we won't kick them out. Like, hey, you can stay and finish whatever you're doing. Nice. So there's been a lot of that too.
Makes sense. It's the same for my wife and I. We're always negotiating who's going, to do what, when. And the workout in the morning or whatever is always a big variable. It's like going to school, you got drop off or whatever, some Saturday plan. So that's interesting. There's probably also I presume, anytime any of your customers, you call them customers, clients, members.
Yes. Yeah.
So any one of your guests, any one of your members who also has a membership somewhere else, you're at risk of losing them, right? So those are two different things with overlapping services. And sometimes that's fine, but anytime you can get rid of that need,
exactly,
to share your
when
member
you can
with
become
an overlapping,
exclusive, it is good, and again, it just gives us another way. We're kind of, again, serving that need. You know, when we need to get better at even listening and asking that question. Like the few people that said they canceled their membership, that one was a surprise to me. In our survey work and our prep work, we hadn't thought about that audience.
Sure,
we'd thought a lot about the Sunday morning or the holiday, or even that family that we had that in our data. Mm-hmm. The whole, I can cancel, like I'm going to charge you. It's only $25 annually is all this is. And so that someone came in and says, I'm charging you $25 extra, but overall they're saving money because they can cancel that other membership. That was one we didn't see coming.
Nice.
It's been good.
Does that pay for itself then, or that change, that transition?
Yeah, it basically, that was all we're doing. So the little fobs that they use, and then we added a few security cameras and door access things. So it was more meant as a member service than a moneymaker. So
I think I thought you told me you employ 400 people there. Is that right?
In the summers, it's like 650, 700 because we have a lot of summer day camp
I remembered 7 actually. I just didn't want to say it because it sound dumb because it sounds so big. We have
an outdoor pool, so you have all those extra lifeguards and things, and then we have day camp in the summer. So there's a lot. So we kind of have that seasonal bit, and then through the rest of the year, we'll be in that 450, 500. That's kind of our year round. But even that's mixed with full time people. We've about 70 full time.
Okay.
and then a mix of...
And then 10 times that many in the summer? That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. But then you have a lot of people like, well, somebody who they teach one class a week.
Okay.
So we have them for 4 hours a month.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we have a lot of those kind of people in the schedule as well.
Yeah. There's no way to really equate that. You think about I tend to, sometimes when I'm talking with a leader, I tend to think about what they lead in various kinds of scale, and the number of people is one of those. But in your case, it doesn't translate well because, you could count man hours or whatever and call it 200 people or something, but it's not the same.
I say
when you got 700 people, there's a lot of little tentacles and variables. You have to trust a lot of executives and mid-level managers to get those things done, right?
So I haven't seen the recent number, but yeah, I talk 700 total, but we're about 145, 150 full-time equivalents.
Yeah.
So even when we look at our HR staff, I mean, we ran with one single HR staff for a while. And so when they talk about, what are the market standards out there of 1 per 100 or 1 per 200,
yeah, it doesn't work.
And I'm like, I've got 700 total people that we're processing paperwork for, we're processing payroll, we're doing. Right. And so we've actually tried to expand our HR staff to a little bit, but still as a nonprofit, even that's a struggle. So we put more of that on the inline managers, but yeah, how do you count how many should we have based on full-time equivalents and total employees?
There isn't. Some things scale, some things don't. I mean, you might have enough desk space or whatever. Might have plenty of that. Yeah. But as far as, you're right. Like employment paperwork or whatever, it's the same number of worksheets for every person, right? So.
And they all need training. I mean, we say we do child abuse prevention for every employee. So, hey, they're all going through that training. Most of them are CPR. So it's even just managing their training records and those kind of things for that many is a huge deal. So
if you had to build a team, I know you've been there now for 6 years.
6 years.
So I'm sure that team is a mixture of people that were there and then people that you've hired and promoted, that kind of thing, right?
Yep.
If you had to build a team from scratch and you were kicking off or building this brand new enormous facility, what would be the most important characteristics for you to look for in your key hires, your handful of key hires?
Yeah, I'll use that 24/7 example. And how do we serve members? It's that insight or that almost inherent empathy of, hey, what do our members need and want? What does the community need and want? There was a long time ago leader in the Dayton Y, actually started Sinclair University, but his was to find the need and endeavor to meet it. Like that was his kind of motto. And so if you can put that in an employee, like again, in a nonprofit like us, whose goal is to serve the community, you need people who are going to think that way. If you have too many people that are just, this is the program I run, so it'll be successful. Or even this is a program someone else runs, let's steal it and bring it in. It may not be a need for our community. So then we're trying to, pound that square peg into the round hole, So I think it is that, we'll say, starting from that empathy, understanding, curiosity, even for what the community truly needs. And then we can figure out how to build it.
I can trade anecdotes with you. There's two things came to mind. One, rock tumbling business, and two, redoing our marketing branding. So I'll go to the rock tumbling business next, but because it's more fun. But I was working recently with my marketing guy to kind of revamp some of our marketing, essentially our messaging.
Yeah.
And it's funny how you put together content or assets, whatever, and you think, oh, that says it perfectly. It's good. You could go away and you come back. However, 6 months later, you look at it again, like, what idiot put this together? And you're like, oh, I wrote that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I did.
Yeah.
I wrote that. I'm like, oh, I'm talking about myself, me. And I wasn't thinking about the experience of in my case, like, executive board or senior leaders or whatever. I wasn't thinking about the journey they go through when it comes to these, whatever, in hiring key people, whatever. And I wasn't thinking about their stresses, concerns, worries, or whatever I'm speaking to. This is how we do it. This is what we do. And I just presume they're there. And they kind of are. There's intersections, obviously, or we wouldn't be in business. But it's it just occurred to me, and I feel like I'm good at, like, if you were to ask me, like, how good are you at putting yourself in somebody else's shoes or whatever, I think I'm pretty good at that. But still, by default, we think about ourselves and our own perspective first and most. And so it's almost like a trained skill, I think, to just continually, in a disciplined fashion, reorient your view to that of another.
Yeah, it's so easy to get, again, even our own life circumstance, our own family dynamic, our own whatever. It's like I'm right now, youngest in high school, oldest just graduated college, two still in school. So we're in that mode. So it's very easy for me to think, what do people in our stage of life need, want, because I'm living it every day. It is a much different experience for me to remind myself, all right, when we had 2-year-old, 4-year-old, 6-year-old, what were we struggling with? What did we need? What were we looking for? When, again, how do we get our people to think about that person who lives alone now, or that person that has this need now, or that, how are we doing it? And all the way from what's attractive, to bring them into our facility. But, we hear from people who literally come to our Y and sit in the parking lot. And then turn around and drive home. Because again, even the intimidation factor of coming in and doing that new thing, whether that's a fitness thing or a class or whatever. Yeah. And so, as one, you got to catch their attention and get them to sign up. And then you got to find that next step of how do you actually welcome them in the door and make them feel comfortable. So then they'll come back for time 2 or time 3. And, we see that secret sauce is most often, again, the relationship they form, that someone who will miss them, or that someone who checks in on them. And so we've taken on more of that. How do we be more intentional about helping them find that person? Not just help them find the Zumba class or help them find the treadmill that they're going to be on, or the pool, or the pottery class, but how do we actually then find that room and then find a person in that room that they can connect with? Yeah. That makes them more likely to come back.
Yeah. That's brilliant.
And so, that's where, again, it's that empathy, but it's empathy for both sides of it. Not only we talk a lot about people will have their stated need of why they're coming to us. And then it's our job to try to uncover the real need. That's right. And so, hey, I need to lose weight. Oh, okay, let's talk about that. Well, it all started since my divorce. I've had this going on, or it all started since this happened in my life. I started, and it's like, oh, wait a minute. So, okay.
It's really, they're looking for the healthier self-image.
You're looking for something else.
Whatever that is, right? Yeah.
They express to us, I need to lose 10 pounds.
Sure. But it's really that self-confidence, self-image, or what, there's always a second thing or a third thing, or whatever that kind of, that's behind it.
How can we earn the right to get to that level of the conversation?
You said something really smart, Chris, about, it's who's there, finding a friend. It reminded me of a leader I used to work for. Hi, Dan McCabe. Thank you for this. I remember him, maybe I was new in the role. I think I was new in the role, and I was doing a one-on-one with him. And I remember him saying, have you found a friend? Do you have any friends here? And it was such an important question, and it felt odd to me. I was a fairly young leader at that level. And so it's kind of new to me. And I've got this, chief something officer of this multi-billion-dollar company saying, have you found a friend? And I haven't forgotten it, not because it was it didn't really hit me or touch me, in an emotional, or it wasn't moving to me, except that it was somebody of weight, of influence, that had prioritized that enough to make it among the first questions to me.
Yeah.
He knew how important it was for his team, for key people in his team to have friends, right, in the organization, not just the checklist and the spreadsheet and the meeting and the to-do list, but to have friends there. Because so you really, I think you reminded me of something that was really potent to me early in my career. And I think you're onto something there, and you should try 2 or 3 different things to make that work.
Yeah.
Right.
We talk about, and otherwise have talked about this, so we borrow it, but achievement, relationship, belonging. And if you can get someone to belonging, like they're in it. They may, again, they're going to walk through the door with an achievement mindset. Like, hey, I want to lift more weight, or I want to do this, or I want to learn how to make this or whatever. And then they start building relationships, and then it moves into belonging. Mm-hmm. And that's when they're, I mean, then they stay, and then they volunteer, and then they donate, and then they do, because it's their place.
Yeah.
I mean, for me as CEO, that's a good thing. I tell people it's the good and the bad. So at our Y, my office is right on the main hallway. Mm-hmm. Try to be as open doors policy. I'm here. I'm accessible. People can come in. So sometimes I get more complaints or requests than I get attaboys or a good job. Mm-hmm. But I try to always put them in that framework. Like, okay, it's because it's their place. Mm-hmm. Like they want it to be excellent. We want it to be excellent. True. So stop by and tell me. We'll go after it. We can't do them all, but I love that. I mean, the alternative is they could just give up and walk out and say, I'm never coming back.
You don't complain about a place when you go in for the first time. You've never been there. You don't have any expectations.
Yeah.
You're just disappointed. And right?
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. To complain is it's like you have expectations. There's expectations that fed that discontent.
Yeah.
Right?
I just heard a talk. The guy was saying, I forget who it was now, but he was saying it's like we need to stop as an organization talking about exceeding expectations because it's impossible. You're not, in something that has repeat visits. Mm-hmm. It's like you can't give yourself the expectation of exceeding expectations every time.
That would mean that's the expectation. So how do you exceed that? It's kind of nonsensical.
You wouldn't get there. It's like you drive yourself crazy, always trying to do it. And he says, no, what you do is you want to exceed expectations on the first visit. Mm-hmm. Show them something new. Like, whoa, this is how. And then you work to meet those expectations every time they come in. Mm-hmm. And then every once in a while you bump it a little. Mm-hmm. But you really want to focus on that and almost give yourself a break of no. And because if you've actually created a higher expectation in that first visit, when they do decide to get mad at you and go try somewhere else, they're going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
And then they aren't going to come back. But I mean, he said it and it was like this freeing moment for me. It's like, okay. So we can just set a high bar and then hold that bar. I mean, I get people who are there 4 or 5 days a week. It's like, I'm not going to show them something new every time they walk through the door.
Right. Can't be dazzled every minute, right?
It was freeing for me to be reminded of that.
I think, exceeding expectations is one of those things it's almost like a magic fantasy term or statement or whatever that we use. And there's so many of them. And it was meaningful the first time because it was compared to something or in some context or whatever. But somehow some of these ideas, we just get hooked on them. We keep repeating them without that meaningful point of reference. Yeah. And it's like, what are we even talking about?
Like I said, you just look back to someone and say, really? How are you going to do that? And then all of a sudden they freeze up.
It's ambitious, I think, to even understand a customer's expectations. That's hard to do. You made a really good point. I'm glad you said what you said about there's something behind the stated. I was reading recently about customer research. Told you I was going through this whole kind of brand thing or whatever, messaging thing. And what's his name? Rory Sutherland has a book called, I can't remember it now, but it's called, what's that function when you like magically turn rocks into gold or something? It starts with an A.
Alchemy.
Yeah. He has a book called Alchemy. And it's about the alchemy of brand, right? Thank you. Rory Sutherland's the author, and he makes the point that, how often, if you were to ask customers what they want, that they don't know the menu of potential things. And if you ask them what they want, they'll, it's the old, I want a faster horse thing or whatever, right? Yep. So we never really know exactly what we want, but we can say it, and that should be a clue to the solution provider, the service provider, at the emotional driver behind it,
right?
Or the broader set of circumstances that produce a need behind it. So I think that's really astute that you notice that about, we're talking about a gym essentially. I mean, it's very, particularly in a facility like yours, it's way more complex than that. There's a lot of family things going on. You have ambition to meet spiritual goals on top of physical goals and all these kind of things, right? So there's obviously a lot more to it in your organization, but at the end of the day, it's a simple thing, but it's not simple at all because everybody comes at that for 100 different reasons.
Well, and we try to say, it's hard to remind ourselves that like the building and all that equipment and the pools, and all, those are the tools. Mm-hmm. And what we're trying to accomplish is help people connect with one another. Mm-hmm. So, but the fact that, we have treadmills in the building, that's a tool to get people in the building. Mm. And there's a subset of our people that are like, no, you know what? I'm coming for the treadmill and I'm putting my AirPods in and that's all I need from you. And I'm good with that. And we're like, for those people, we're glad you're here. Mm-hmm. But we know the majority of the people that are walking in, they are looking for something more than that. And then, like I said, the building itself is a tool around them. Yeah, we hope, as you mentioned, and spirit, mind, body. We're trying to help them get healthier in all three. Mm-hmm. They often walk through with the body and mind, and we can meet them on the spirit and mind side.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's icing on the cake, right? It just makes it that much better.
That's when we're winning. So
yeah, that's awesome. Did you guys have a big surge after COVID?
You know, it was interesting because we were shut down for like 60 days. Just completely shut down. And in Ohio, that was great. There were people in other parts of the country that were shut down for much longer than that.
So we got off easy, huh?
Yeah. In that regard, we were about the shortest time frame.
Interesting.
It was weird how the surge came back because you still had people in the population that were like, okay, the idea of being in a public place, the idea of touching equipment or being near someone with heavy breathing, from where. So it was a gradual. Like we're back now, and I do think in general, people valued their health more. I think that was one of the results that came out of COVID for many people. I need to be intentional about this. I need to.
Good data that the people that were the most overweight and had respiratory problems are the ones that suffered the most.
They had the comorbidities So I think in the big picture, yes, we came back stronger. Mm-hmm. Our standing in the community, I think, improved. I mean, we talked a lot. Like we try not to be just a gym and swim. Mm-hmm. And so when they shut us down, the state shuts us down for a while, we had a chance. We kept all our people on. We said, all right, we have 2 goals. It's like, we don't want to be a gym and swim. Now's our chance to prove it. Mm-hmm. Like what else can we do? Mm-hmm. And then how do we reopen better than we closed? Like those were the 2 things that our staff, we just started working on right away. So for, what's more than a gym and swim? Like we were calling our senior members and checking on them. We were doing grocery runs, for people. Me? No, it's like just checking in. People who we knew we had a lot of older, especially single people who like they show up 5 days a week and sit and eat, drink coffee and hang out for 3 or 4 hours.
Most human experience they have.
This was their time.
Yeah.
It's funny when we first reopened, again, kind of hearing the guidance from people on who was most at risk, we actually reopened for younger people. And we tried to say at first, like, hey, we're not going to have older people in. And they lit me up. And I'm thankful they did. They lit me up and they said, hey, if I'm going to survive this, it's because I need that. I need you. Yeah. I need you to be open for me. Let me worry about my health.
You worry about my mental health and my emotional health, right?
I need that place. I need that. That's where I connect. That's the people who care for me. That's the people who check in with me. That's the physical activity that kept me off the at-risk list.
Yeah.
So.
What a testament to the mission you serve, that demand was so clear in a state of fear that we all shared in some way or another. And I think that's reassuring in a way, despite being in a state of chaos, right?
To be a safe place, to be the place that people are like, okay, I know you're doing all that you can to keep me safe, and I want to be there. That was a good. In the long picture, I wouldn't choose to go through it again, obviously, but in the big picture, we came out stronger on a lot of ways.
I'm sure that year it was horrible.
Coming out of COVID. Yeah.
That makes sense. The reason I asked that, Chris, is that, I feel like when I was young, I grew up in San Diego, so everything was outdoors because it was always kind of moderate climate.
Yeah.
But we had like a rec center. And so you would go there and, it's some city-funded facility or whatever. I didn't have a membership. I was a poor kid, right? But we'd play some little whatever on a square board. It wasn't pool, but it was some little kiddie version of it. And you could get a ball. I think I don't know if you had to leave an ID. I didn't have an ID, so we had to do something to get a ball, sign it out or something, and kick a ball around and return it. And then you had to grow a little older and get your parents to drop you off at the mall. And so we'd run around the mall and be told not to loiter and get run out of a store where we weren't buying anything or whatever. But we were in some public place, some third place, right? And, there's there's no rec centers or malls really anymore. They have a hard time, I think, staying funded or whatever. And malls have a hard. I don't say no, that's not true. But the demand and the participation in these third places is suffering a bit, I think. And there's multiple reasons. I speculate that it's parents are a little bit more cautious about keeping their kids close and knowing exactly where they are, and they got the GPS locators on them and everything else, right? Maybe there's some good to that. And I think we obviously are not going to the mall because Amazon brings everything here,
right?
Right. So, and there's other places that I think have suffered. Anyway, all that to say, I feel like there's a place like the Y where there's this kind of complex set of things to do, recreational. And I learned that there was a disc golf course out there, and I've yet to play it, but I want to, because it's a cool, there's 100 different things you can do at a facility like that. Something for everyone, essentially. Right. And I feel like that the one thing that everybody is kind of feeling is like, where do I go? Right. Like, where do I go to do stuff on the regular? And, so I just wondered if that kind of like switch to the digital world, the remote world or whatever, has had an impact.
Yes, in lots of ways. We were just talking to a group that helps design new YMCA facilities, and they're putting much more focus in creating social spaces. So yeah, it's great. You got to have the studio where the class happens, but in the hallway outside the studio, can we put some benches or some couches or something? Can we have a coffee, like we have a coffee shop kind of in our Y? Can we create these spaces that encourages that social? I mean, that was the other thing with COVID. We were like, get in, get out. Like, okay,
sure.
No,
you're losing a lot of the value of that facility.
Like, that's what makes us different. If it was just get in, get out, do it in your basement in your own gym or something like that. For the people that come in and say, I get to see the people in class, and then we get to sit outside and talk a while.
It reminds me of church when I was a kid. My family took me to this. We went to this small church. There's maybe 100 to 120 people there on a given Sunday morning or whatever. And like most kids, I think I was bored with the service, couldn't wait for it to be over. But I always kind of got a feel good as my parents, and I would nag them about it. I would pretend like I didn't like it. They would linger around in that big lobby area and just mix it up with all their friends and stuff and whatever. And it was kind of like a second family kind of vibe, because it was such a small community of people. It wasn't the exact same 100 people, but it was 80 of them that you saw all the time, right? And I enjoyed that. It felt like 45 minutes. It was probably 4 or 5.
Yeah, it wasn't long.
My family was social, man, but they would mix it up in that little extra space. And I think that little extra space, it's not what you're there for, but it kind of is. For me at 8 years old, that's what I was there for. Not by design, but I loved it.
I'm going to add to that, and then I'm going to come back to even talking a little bit about junior high and high school kids. But so one of our favorite moments as a family, my wife and I. So when I was on staff at the church before the Y, we got a sabbatical. So we got a month where we were told, you're not allowed to show up for church. You need to go. And so we traveled out west. We did some of that.
That's a nice asset.
It was wonderful.
Yeah.
But we came back to town, and there was still like a Sunday left.
Okay.
Where we weren't supposed to be there yet. And my kids wanted to go. And they went, and when they came home, we're like, that's great. You guys go. And I thought we'd hear about their friend, whatever. All they talked about were the older adults who were like checking in with them. It's like, hey, good to see you guys back. What'd you guys do? What'd you have fun? So that's what mattered to my kids, that they wanted to go to church, which I love that. 2, they commented on all the adults that checked in on them, that they'd missed that, kind of these other adults in their life. And so it was amazing. I mean, and so now the transition into the Y, where, early on, one of the questions I asked my staff was, what if I told you there was a busload of junior high students on their way to us? What's your first reaction? And of course, they're like, oh no. Oh, what are we going to do? What are they, and so I was like, okay, stop.
Did that hurt you as a leader to hear that?
I mean, at first, like I said, I was new enough at the time. So I'm like, okay, tell me more. Like what, why wasn't our reaction? That's awesome. Let's go get ready, or let's do whatever. And it was a little bit of that. what are they going to break? Where are they going to wander? How are we going to kind of chaperone them? How are we going to do? Like we get complaints in our main weight room right now. The number of teenagers that are coming into our weight room right now it's just exploded.
Yeah,
the number of kids. I mean, we just see so many coming right after school.
Interesting. They're going there to lift,
male and female. Yeah. I mean, even just and is there some etiquette we need to teach? Yes. Are there a few too many like iPhone photos and TikTok dances and some of that? Yes. But we can teach etiquette. I want to look at our people and say, where else would you rather they be? Like, aren't we glad they're here instead of finding somewhere else to have trouble or to be a problem?
Come here, get healthier. You're in a safe place.
You're in a safe place.
And
so that's one of our challenges is we still get, kind of going back to your mall story, we still get the kids that come and they just want to walk the halls they're at the mall.
They're just loitering. Right?
They're just loitering.
Man, it occurred to me recently, whenever I considered this third space thing, how valuable that loitering was to my life. Because you know what I wasn't doing when I was loitering? Is I wasn't doing anything illegal.
Right.
I wasn't doing anything like that was harmful to us. You know what I mean? Like, we were loitering, and it wasn't a supervised rule kind of, but there was a bunch of adults and there's some, I think there's accountability in the public.
And we still have something, we need to make sure they're not, breaking the rules. We need to make sure they're not getting in trouble. We still have a responsibility for that.
Sure.
But we would spend all this energy, like as an organization, trying to catch the kids that were sneaking in. I'm like, hey, I want to catch them if they're sneaking in. But instead of like, you're forbidden from ever being here, let's like, hey, how can we help you come here like legit?
Yeah.
Like, listen, we're glad you're here. I mean,
sure. Hey, why don't you get a membership?
You're working hard to sneak into here. Like, okay, that should be us doing something right. Not we need to fight hard.
Man, I love that attitude. That's brilliant.
Trying to work through that.
Yeah.
Again, sometimes they're from families that are like, no, we're not doing a Y membership. No, I was like, okay, how can we work through that? Or something? But again, it's just having that first mindset being, instead of the first thought being no, how's the first thought? How do we say yes? Just get to start there. Sometimes you can't figure out the answer and the answer ends up being no, but don't start there.
When you hire people, particularly your leaders, is there anything that you're consistently more cautious about when you see it? When you're vetting somebody and you're going through an interview process or you're kind of negotiating, whatever, is there anything that you, as a leader, and you're thinking about building kind of your next level or line of leaders, is there anything you're consistently on alert for, on guard of?
Yeah. Too rigid is, if they're like, we're set in our ways, and again, it can come across very process strong. And so even in an interview, sometimes they're selling it as a feature, of how locked in they are and how once I get this process designed, we are going to stick to it. And I just feel in our environment, some of this is me as a leader, but some of it's our environment. It's like, again, I need some of that. How would we say yes? How would we get creative mindset kind of inherent there? And so looking for that rigidity that it could be a problem. And again, it's asking the questions even in the interview. Okay, tell me about a time where your process broke. How'd you react to that? Or tell me about a time where something came in and you didn't have a process for that. How did you respond? What did you do? That's kind of what I'm looking for. I want to see that flexibility.
I was golfing with a friend the other day, and he, a new friend actually, now that I think about the experience, we were just getting acquainted, first time we had hung out together. And we were talking about writing policy. And he was essentially saying, like, there's nothing I'd like to do less than write policies. And I agreed with him personally. I'm not saying policies are bad, but I'm the kind, I don't know if I've ever read through a whole policy. I just don't care about what the policy is, because I know the policy, unless it was written yesterday, there's some caveat, there's some asterisks, there's some. And so I've always found that I will learn more about how a thing is done by how it's being done, or by the opinion of somebody who's responsible for how it's done, right? So I'd rather have the conversation and learn about the existing, behavior rather than the process that was written, whether it was 6 years or 6 months ago. It's old, right? And so I'm always a little reluctant to give time and attention to writing policies that I know are going to be treated that way, like rightfully so, or at least to some degree, rightfully so, right?
Well, we literally just this morning, we had a meeting around our child abuse prevention policy. So obviously something we need to, we're dealing with, we have childcare, we have swim lessons, we have all these things where we are with children in our care. And so we absolutely have to have a policy. But in that conversation, it's like, okay, I need to make sure that as we're talking through this, how we actually apply it is in the conversation. If
that's the only policy that matters.
It can legally be spot on, but if we don't have a way to actually fulfill it, then there's not a point. So we always have to bring that back. And so let's make sure there's enough people in the room in this policy conversation. We have a risk committee and it was good. We had a lot of good experiences and knowledge there. I said, okay, I think we need to have a few more of our people that are physically teaching a swim lesson or are in one of our childcare classrooms or are doing this kind of thing. Make sure they're in the room. And when they hear the policy, they go, there's no way I could do that. And then we need to figure out how do we adjust it. So again, but there is some of that, just like you said, going back, that rigidity of there are people who love their policies, their thing. I like having one on my team. I just, I
can't make a whole team of it.
I can't a whole team of that. And I need to make sure they at least have some flexibility to say, not how do I break it, but how do I make sure it fits, what we're trying to do. And often, again, those very rigid people, going back to that question, they feel like you're trying to break it. I'm like, I'm not trying to break it. I just need it to be functional.
And I think sometimes we forget, this goes back to what you said earlier about empathy for the member, stakeholder, customer, whatever, is that we forget that the process, behavior, service that we do as a business, we forget what it's for, the purpose, and then even sometimes I think, your organization provides a workout facility, right? But what's the purpose? To serve the, body, mind, soul of your member, right? So when you think about your policy and you don't kind of walk it back to that purpose, most of them you could throw away, right? Or half, if you were to aggregate them over time and never throw them away, whatever, most of them are ultimately become useless because you have to kind of respond to things that change, right?
Yep.
And I think I heard somebody talking about it on a podcast. I forget what state it was. It might be Montana. It's illegal to bathe your horse in a tub or something. And that's still on the books, but who cares? Because it's not being enforced, right? It's the application is all that really matters, right?
I have a bit of reputation in town, so I'm on different boards, different groups, different things. And one of my pet peeves is, when we have bylaws or something. So the bylaws are written this way, and we actually do this. I'm like, hey,
which one is
I don't care which one we change, but they just need to match. So like, if this is how we do it, let's just edit the bylaws and make it match. If these are the bylaws, okay, then we need to change our practice to match it up. It's like, and I'm agnostic onto which one in most cases. I'm like, they just need to be the same. And I'd say the same thing with those laws. All right, if there's a law that we're not enforcing, we're not doing, let's just do the process to get it off the books and move on. Kind of going back on that mission. So one of the things, and I learned this, Steve Tarver was the CEO of the Louisville Y for years. He just retired. And when I first started, I saw him speak at a class, and he said that he tries to speak to every new hire class because there are some things it's important to hear from the CEO.
True.
And so I've tried to do that. I get most of them. And the one thing I share is the mission statement. The mission of the YMCA is put Christian principles into practice through programs that build healthy spirit, mind, body for all. So I said, I want you to hear that from me. I said, most organizations, if they have a mission statement, they spent 6 months in committee working on it. They came up with it. They put it together. It maybe goes on a wall somewhere. It maybe doesn't. How practical is it day to day?
Let me ask you something. This might challenge you. Has anybody ever told you that you say that too much?
No.
Then maybe you don't say it enough.
I completely agree.
Right? I love it because I think saying it a lot is what a leader should be doing. And like negotiating, you don't know that you've gotten your best dollar until somebody says that's too much.
Yeah.
Right. So I think one of the kind of guides that I've referenced is when a cultural or operational standard is so important that it needs to be kind of pervasive throughout.
Say it everywhere.
Then you repeat the heck out of it, and until somebody says, "Oh, that's too much," and then you know that you've said it enough. Right?
I love that. One of our strategic plan initiatives right now is that people know who we are. And so even so if you come into our Y, and we're not there yet, but if you come into our Y, and let's say you're just visiting, you go into one of our conference rooms, you're there a half hour, and you walk out. Did somewhere on that walk or in that conference room, did you see our mission statement? Did you see our values? Did someone say it, or did you see it even on the walls or in things like that? It's like, how do we get better at making sure that you didn't miss it?
Yeah.
Like if you're with us for any amount of time at all, you need to know what's important to us. And I mean, all organizations should have that mindset. And I think, and that's one, to get that part of the thought. And so we say, put Christian principles into practice. Well, what does that mean? Well, we've listed out 12 Christian principles and there's one per month that we focus on. And so like for this month, it's respect. Well, then how do we apply it? Well, okay, we're talking a lot about, hey, and getting ready for an election coming up. There's gonna be a lot of different opinions. One of our values is respect. So let's make sure that even as we share our different opinions, we do it in a respectful way. We show respect for different opinions. And so we're trying to have that messaging to our staff, to our members. And you say, why? Well, because we said our mission is to put Christian principles into practice. We're just trying to demonstrate how we do that and then call it out when we do. Why'd you do that? Well, because I said I would.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't be surprised by it. To your point, like you should have to reach a point where it's like, no, Chris, I know I've heard this before. You don't need to say it again.
I just, it's as a leader, it's funny how often I feel like, I'm repeating myself. Because like naturally, organically, the amount of times you need to say something for it to kind of saturate a team, especially if it's like 700 people or whatever, right? But even a team of a couple dozen people, I've managed teams up to 100-ish. And if the number of times you have to say something before you finally, obviously they're not all standing in a circle for me to say that all the time or whatever. So you have to repeat it over and over in various mediums and whatever else. And after a while, I start to be annoyed by it, by my own repetition. And I'm like, I'm embarrassed by it. It's an unnatural amount of attention that you have to give something as a leader to get everybody on the same page.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like you have to give yourself permission to be annoying.
I totally have been there where I'm like, gosh, they think I'm starting to go senile because I just only have certain words or, that I use over and over. But I'll also say though, one of my favorite moments as a leader is when I've heard one of my staff say my words. They're theirs now. When they're theirs now, and I hear them repeating them.
Sure.
And I'm like, okay.
Well, you didn't make them up either, right?
Yeah.
So that's good leadership, man.
That one clicked. There's this moment where, okay, now we've transferred. Like, and in some ways, if I hear it enough, it's like when I first started, my big phrase was, we need to build capacity. Everyone's kind of feels like they're running at the end of their rope. It's like I need, as an organization, we need to add capacity in. Going back to that flexibility, opposite of rigidity. If we're going to respond to our members, if we're going to respond to needs, we need to have a little capacity available to go do that, or you just keep running in the same thing. And so my first 2 years, probably it was like, hey, we need to add capacity. And so then when I started hearing my staff talking about, well, I want to do this because it'll add capacity. Okay, now we're starting to get there.
So explain what that means by adding capacity. What do you mean by that?
For us, it was where I really started with it was, I would say, adding the capacity within our schedules, my own schedule, my staff's schedule, my mindset. Like, do I have the time, capacity to have that strategic thought time? Do I have the capacity to think 3, 5, 7, 10 years out, or am I only living in what's right now? Do I have the capacity to meet with that other person. So a lot of times we talked about our own schedules. And whenever I talk schedules, I kind of go to that mind space. Like, do I have the place in my thoughts where I can go to that? So it started there. But then it went to, from a staffing standpoint, like, we can't.
That's what enables it. Right?
Yeah. We can't afford to just have extra staff sitting around, but if I have a great idea,
yeah.
Like if I have a great idea walking out of here today and I go back to the why, do I have someone I can give it to that has the room to take it and run with some research, some of that type of thing? Or will a great idea die because there's no one to hand it to?
Right, because everybody's just so laden with tasks.
Yeah.
They're chasing their to-do list and they don't have time to solve a problem or think through a different way to do something.
Yep, exactly. So then we kind of added to it, then it became about space capacity. It's like, well, if we had a great idea and I had a person to run it, where would we do it? We have this, again, we talk about huge why, but if I don't have a room to put that in, I mean, we had one this morning. We're talking, there's an opportunity to bring a power wheelchair basketball thing in. And it's great. It's going, Christopher Reeve Foundation's a part of it. It's like they need space. We have 4 gyms. You'd think that'd be easy, but finding a gym on a Saturday morning can be hard.
It's not already being used.
It's not already being used. So we were just talking this morning about, okay, do we have the capacity to do this? And what does it mean, to fit this in? Because this is one we want to do. Like I'm feeling like we need to do it. So therefore, then we have to be able to find a way. And
I'll tell you what, serving that community is important because it's I have a cousin who went through a spinal cord injury accident and had to learn how to live again. She's still in the process, and she's actually doing some consulting work for me and one of my colleagues this week, actually, which is cool. That's a milestone, to be able to kind of do some busy stuff and apply some skills. But anyway, you really take inventory of how easy it is to do things. But when your physical capabilities are limited and it's new in particular, and you haven't spent your whole life learning how to live, it's great to find a resource that's available to you.
And to pull it back to that mission statement for us, I said it ends with for all. So I'm saying I'm trying to do this thing in our community that every single person can be included. And so here's a way that we can do it. And again, a lot of times when you're pushing those capacities, what are the things you're going to say no to, or what are the things that you're prepared to have the conversation? One of our commitments we try to make is, even when we fill all of our gyms, we will try to keep one basket available for, again,
whatever happens.
The dad or the mom and the kid that just wants to come in and shoot. Like, so we say, hey, our goal is that if you just kind of wander in, like, we just want a little time for that. We'll try to have a court available for you. We say the same thing to our lap swimmers. Even when we got lap swimming, we got teams going, we got water fitness, we're going to try to have a lap lane for you available just so you can come in. We can't always do that, but we say that's our goal. And so in the conversation this morning, it's like, I'm willing to talk to that parent that's upset that, hey, I came in to shoot hoops with my kid and I can't do it. Say, I want you to look at the court right now. Like, this is a good thing for us that we're doing this. Are you willing to sacrifice that court time for us to offer this program? And I think 99% of people are going to say yes.
Yeah.
I think even some of them are going to say, yes, can we help? And that's even better.
How are you doing on capacity now, both in terms of headspace, bandwidth of your team and facilities? And however else you measure it. I don't know.
I've been fortunate like I said, in the 6 years I've been here, I've added a chief development officer. So again, fundraising was a primary responsibility for my role. I still do a lot of it, but I have now someone, one of the other phrases I use, I have someone else who can wake up thinking about it, so he's in that role. And then about 18 months ago, we added a chief operating officer.
Okay, nice.
We didn't have that. A lot of those, facilities, housekeeping reported directly to me. So we just created a layer there.
That frees up some headspace for all of you, right?
Yeah. And so again, all of those were around that piece of how are we creating organizational capacity. Sometimes it's me capacity, to be doing it, but I think then the organization adds that as well.
That's a big one because there's a lot of things I'm sure that come to you And if you don't have capacity as the senior executive in the organization, you're done, right? Like nothing new is going to happen.
Yeah.
No appropriate changes are going to be weighed fairly. You're going to miss all kinds of things and mess up all kinds of things. So if anybody should have capacity, it should absolutely be you first. That's my conviction.
I mean, the answer is
you
yes.
should not be busy chasing tasks, right?
I agree, but I'll say it's a challenge to communicate to a team, because at times it can appear like I'm not in on the dirty work.
You're not busy.
I'm not busy. Oh, you're out meeting. Chris, you're out doing podcasts. You're out meeting
Chris,
with people.
If you're busy, you're screwed, man.
yeah, and trying to give some of that teaching that, hey, I have times where I'm supposed to be thinking about what do we look like 10 years from now?
That's right.
Like I'm not asking anyone else on my team very often to regularly think about what 10 years from now looks like.
That's right.
But it's my job to at least think about that some. And for the most part, I love when anyone on my team comes up with a brand new idea that we've never done anything like it before. They walk, but those are like eureka moments that just happen. I don't necessarily have that on anyone's job description, that their job is to find new ideas.
I think it's great that you have invested intentionally into making that headspace for your team, and that you realize the value of holding that for yourself. I find as a small business owner, one of the biggest challenges, and why I think a lot of people burn out when they're starting in a startup situation, is that you won't have capacity. There's too many things to do. And so you either go more or do more, or something suffers. And in my case, something suffers because I just won't run myself out of, I'm not going to run myself into the ground. But not having enough capacity to think and decide and to be creative, then it just becomes a job, a rote job, and that's all it will ever be. And before long, the world will consume that. You have to be able to pivot and change, and that takes a lot of headspace.
Yeah,
to be able to
and
do well.
It's hard. I have enough people pleasing in me that I can fall into the tyranny of the urgent so easy, and at times I can be conscious of, I can talk myself into, and I know it's wrong, but I can still talk myself into the idea of when I delegate something, that's me being selfish, and so I still struggle with some of those things where it's like, hey, when I ask someone else to do something, I should be willing to do it myself. Well, like, yes, but I also have something else. And so I think it's what I'm getting better at is kind of acknowledging that I need this thinking time. I need this brainstorming, wandering. Again, even a lot of my problem solving, I do processing out loud. And so that means I need to create that. One of the things, and my team's talk about things your team's heard a lot. I think they've heard me say we're big Hamilton fans, the musical Hamilton. Okay. And one of the songs in that is The Room Where It Happened. And so the background is it's the room where Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton basically figured out where Washington, D.C. was going to be. And they negotiated away the national treasury and all that. So that's what happened. And Aaron Burr got left out of that meeting. And so he sings a song like, I want to be in the room where it happened. And so I've used a lot, and even my role as CEO, to say, if I'm going to be in the room where it happens, I've got to go to a lot of rooms. So I've got to just keep showing up. And sometimes nothing happens. And you're just like, I sat in that room for an hour and a half, and all right, I'm going to just trust that down the road there'll be benefit. But as I'm walking out of the room, I didn't necessarily feel anything that positive happened. But I've also seen enough times where I've sat in enough of those rooms where something did, that if we'd have missed it, like we'd have missed an opportunity. So putting words to that for my team has helped a little bit with you're just out doing whatever. And it's like, well, I'm out doing something. What? I'm not sure yet. Ask me in 3 years. And I'll be able to tell you what good came out of that conversation.
You're not dumping work on somebody else. You're investing trust into other people that you believe in.
It's a good line.
Delegating is not you getting out of stuff. It's you committing to the thing that you're most responsible for as an executive. And that is the future of the organization and making the right decisions. You have a lot more than I do in this organization that size. A lot of different things you could afford your time to. and any one of them could be a mistake. I often get the feeling that I'm missing things that are important because I'm on a task or whatever.
Yep.
I'm sending an invoice and I feel like I'm losing. I got to do that to get the money though.
Right.
But I feel like I'm losing because I'm doing some task and it terrifies me that I'm not focused on what's next or whatever. And, the larger the organization gets, the more people that are doing the more things, the more programs, the more features, whatever, the more intimidating it could be that you're not seeing the connections and the opportunities. So when you're delegating, you should take comfort in the fact that you're protecting that team and those members.
I hit a point where I started thinking it, and then I realized I need to say this to my team. And so I'm trying to focus on that right now, where it's something will be going on, and I'm like, I didn't know about that. And it was a big move for me to say, I didn't know about that, and that's really good that I didn't know about it. And now I make sure to say that to my team. Like, hey, I didn't know this was happening, and I'm really thankful for that. That's a good thing. Good job. Now, do you need me for,
glad you made that happen?
Yeah.
Can I help?
Sometimes they need me to step in and help or solve a problem or whatever. There is a time, but there are times where it's like, you guys are doing what? Oh, that's awesome.
That's fun.
but I'm getting better at verbally kind of affirming, because when I first, I'd say like, oh, I didn't know about that. They'd start apologizing. I'm like, whoa, I'm sorry.
Right. Right.
I didn't know about it, and that's a good thing.
That's right.
That means you're running with it. It's on mission. It's what we want to be doing. I love that I didn't know about it. Now, how can I help?
That's awesome.
So,
last couple things as we kind of we're running out of time here, but I want to get into tend to kind of end thinking about the future, right? So one thing I'm curious about is what are the big things on your frontier over the next year to 2 years? What are you thinking about and hoping you can see come to be for the Countryside YMCA in Lebanon? Yeah,
I have. It's a good question. It's one I'm wrestling with on myself right now. So it's good. I have good accountability here. Mm-hmm. It's out on the podcast. But I have a couple things. There's a curriculum I'm working through that's kind of around this idea of how do we apply the Christian principles of the Y to leadership. Mm-hmm. And so kind of put those together in a way that it's something we can do locally, but it's potentially something we could do even further to other Ys and other communities, things like that. And then I think our Y has a few expansion opportunities. And it's more about population density. As where we are in Warren County, Ohio is getting more and more populated. Even though someone lives in the same house they've lived in, they're further away from our Y just because of the travel time. Mm-hmm. And so thinking about where we expand, and the reason I put it out there as an accountability issue is I don't need to do those things. Like we could be successful by just kind of staying steady, not pushing into these new spaces, kind of knowing like, okay, if we push into those, it's going to be a lot.
You're burdening yourself with your ambition, huh?
Yeah. And so I am wrestling through, but kind of like, hey, I know what I'm supposed to do. Mm-hmm. I need to respond to that, and we need to go for it. But like I said, knowing that we'll be fine if we don't.
Well, let me. I'll end with this. Last two questions. So this is a 2-in-1. What's going to get in your way, and then what are you going to do about it?
One we talked about. One of the things that will get in my way is if I get too distracted into, let's say, the tyranny of the urgent. Again, all of these things are more of that forward thinking long term. Mm-hmm. So if I allow myself to get too pulled into the day to day, week to week, month to month of things. Now I don't mean not being engaged. I just think I need to do a better job of actually compartmentalizing, my schedule, my time to say, hey, these are the times where I'm engaged in operating what we have. Mm-hmm. And these are the times where I'm going to be in this, I call it expansion mode, but I'd just say, just new thought, and new work. And just how do I How do I do a better job of managing those two times? I think there's going to be some time where with my staff, I need them to embrace that me being compartmentalized like that is a good thing. And it's a right thing. Because it's easier for them if I'm just in kind of their stuff.
Sure.
And engaged in it. And I'm actually trying to, no, it's actually good for you that I'm not. That means, again, you're trusted, you're empowered, you're, this is actually good for you when I'm saying, you got this. I trust you to go knock it out of the park on, or you solve the problem. But that's not always been our culture. You know, it's like, hey, we need the whole team on deck, to help. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to be there, but I trust you guys to do it. How to do that in a way that's not absentee leadership, but it's empowered leadership, saying, hey, you guys have this. And I think that's the challenge. I mean, it's mixing into, and this is just that personal work-life balance of, I can at times when I take on those more things, I'm saying, I'm struggling for capacity. I can at times pull that capacity from my family and those pieces.
Expensive, right?
And that's very expensive. And so, okay, now how do I manage that too, to say these are the right things to do, but not at the sacrifice of the wrong things, And so I think that's my challenge. But yet I keep getting repeated conviction that this is where we're supposed to go.
Yeah, that's great.
This is what we're supposed to do.
Appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you.